we have seen how technology revolutionized and disrupted the world, the enterprises, and our lives. For the past 2 years, we have seen the same world disrupted by a pandemic. In that context, we are meeting at historically most challenging times ever. Technology has never been more critical than today. With this reliance comes vulnerabilities and risks. Living with the pandemic, as our host said, is a new normal. Via this summit today, we are looking for solutions to make this new normal more secure. Throughout the day, top experts will share their insights to how this could be done, what needs to be done, and the challenges for enterprises. On behalf of the Daily FT, CICRA, and our partners, I extend a warm welcome to all to an empowering Cybersecurity Summit 2021. Special mention and thanks to our chief guest, the Honorable Central Bank Governor, Mr. Ajit Niwad Cabral, despite his busy schedule, our speakers and panelists, our valued partners, Visa, Huawei, NDB, and Lanka Clear, and all our participants. Indeed, it is your opportunity today to benefit from experts. Question them as much as possible for answers and make the panel discussions interactive. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start securing the world new normal from today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kasim. With that, ladies and gentlemen, before we move into the session 1 today, we would now like to look at the sponsors who made this a possibility today.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation. It turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it somewhere. With NEOS, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking. NDB Bank.
Ladies and gentlemen, shall we give a good round of applause to all the sponsors for making this summit a success today? Thank you. And with that, we have now come to the time to start our very first session of the summit today. That is titled as Banking, Payments and Settlements and Digital Currencies. Banking and finance plays a key role in the economy. Its stability and security are critical. Therefore, this session will focus on the overall security aspects in the banking, payments and settlements, and also on the emerging trends of digital currencies. And ladies and gentlemen, to open this session and for the remarks, I now invite our chief guest this morning, Honorable Governor, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ajit Niwad Cabral. And introducing him a little bit, he is the 16th Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. He was a senior advisor to the Prime Minister on economic affairs in 2019-2020. During his tenure as the 12th Governor of CBSL from 2006 to 2015, he functioned as alternate Governor of the International Monetary Fund and as the Chairman of the Southeast Asian Central Bank's Board of Governors and also as a Chairman of the SAARC Central Bank Governors Forum. He is a chartered accountant by profession, having qualified as one of the youngest chartered accountants in Sri Lanka. He was honored by the Ramanya Mahanikaya with the title Deshakirti Lanka Putra for his outstanding service to the country and the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a good round of applause as I invite Honorable Governor of CBSL, Mr. Ajit Niwad Cabral, to open the session.
Good morning to everyone. My friend Nista and all the other dignitaries, the Assistant Governor of the Central Bank, as well as many who are interested in cyber security. It's a privilege to be here this morning with you. And I was quite impressed with the beautiful stories that were being displayed by different sponsors. Although those are stories, I think it tells some very interesting, gives us some very interesting messages, and even for people like us, it's very useful. Thank you for that. And also, I believe I was one of the first to be associated with cybersecurity way back in 2011, when it was first introduced as a concept into Sri Lanka. And I believe we have come a long way in the last 10 years as a profession, as a concept, and it's good to see that kind of interest in that subject. We are very dependent on cyber today. All of us at every stage of our lives, whether it's personal or business or interactions with each other, we rely on the data, on the information, on voice, on messaging, and so on. So we are naturally interested in ensuring that it continues. The time that something becomes very important, it is also time for it to be safeguarded. Because when something is not very important, there is no absolute need for its protection, because even if you lose it, you'll probably not feel it so much. But today, if you lose your data, you lose your information, for whatever reason, it becomes a huge problem for you. So people know that, those who are against you know that, those who are for you know that, and that's why it's important that we safeguard our information. In business, we are struggling to protect our information. Today, information is stored in various places. Sometimes those who can access it can do so without you knowing as well. That's what makes it all the more dangerous as well as all the more challenging. So I think in the next few years, as it is today, we will have to make sure that our systems are secure. The government is also extremely concerned about that and ensuring that it is maintained at the topmost levels. As a central bank, we have even a deeper responsibility to ensure the safeguarding of all the information as well as the systems that are used for payments, for receipts, as well as transfers. So our work is cut out. And I believe in the next few years it will get even harder. Today we have robots, we have artificial intelligence, and we can even have parallel currencies. So that's also posing serious challenges to the established world. And in that sense, it is important that we make sure that what we have is safeguarded and that there is greater understanding of these concepts so that all work together. They say the strength of a chain is the strength of the weakest link. So you only need one weak link in order to penetrate into a system. One system error, one opportunity for entry by someone could be all that is needed in order to penetrate into a massive system. So data integrity to be ensured and to be protected is a huge challenge for everyone today. We have conveniences, but those come at a cost. We all know that when a duck is moving on a pond, it has almost a seamless journey. But underneath, there's a huge volatility of the paddling of its feet. So in the same way, I think many of you here who are involved in data security as well as ensuring the integrity of the data have a very, very challenging role to play, because not only are you interested in ensuring that the surface looks good, you've got to ensure that all the steps that are being taken underneath the surface are also designed to ensure the integrity of the system. So I think we are keen to ensure that Sri Lanka is established as a destination which is providing that security, providing that integrity, and in that sense, the work that you do is greatly appreciated by us, because what you do will ensure that Sri Lanka can face up to these challenges with a lot more confidence as we go forward. So I want to thank you for inviting me this morning to share a few thoughts with you, as well as understand the work you are doing. I'm afraid I may not be able to stay on longer, but I would be very much interested in understanding what has transpired today with the discussions that you have had. and I know Nista would probably highlight it in his very interesting newspaper, the Daily FT. And when you do so, I believe it's necessary for all of us to embrace the concept as well as ensure that we go forward together with security as well as integrity. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I wish your conference all success and all interesting times today. Thank you very much.
A very big thank you to the Honorable Governor, and I request the Governor to remain on stage as we have a token of appreciation to be presented. And to present this token of appreciation, I invite the CEO of CICRA Holdings, Mr. Bhushan Dayaratna, and CEO of Daily FT, Mr. Nisar Qasim, on stage. Shall we give a good round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? The pleasure and the honor is all ours to have you as a chief guest today at the Cyber Summit. Thank you so much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving into the keynote speech this morning, which you will hear virtually. We're connected. The world is small. The world has become very smaller, where we deliver keynotes from different areas of the world. And for this, I invite the keynote speaker, Senior Director, Corporate Strategy at Visa Asia Pacific, Mr. Akash Degvekar. And to introduce him a little bit, he leads Visa's digital currency strategy and commercialization efforts in Asia Pacific, engaging with clients, policymakers, and fintech partners. Prior to Visa, he was an associate partner at Bain & Company across the US and Southeast Asia. He was a member of the firm's private equity, retail, and technology practices and supported clients on a diverse range of issues, including merger integrations, commercial due diligence, growth strategy, go-to-market strategy, and performance improvement. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a good round of applause as we are now joined by Akash Degvekar, Senior Director, Corporate Strategy, Visa Asia Pacific.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. Before I start, just wanted to make sure you're able to hear me okay?
Yes, you're audible and visible as well. Loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, good morning to all of you, Honorable Governor, Honorable Assistant Governor, to all the dignitaries assembled there. Thank you to the Honorable Governor for sharing his views, and thank you very much to the organizing team for inviting me here today to share Visa's views on the evolution of digital currency and the path forward. As was just mentioned, my name is Akash Degvekar. I'm Senior Director of Visa based in Singapore, and I'm responsible for driving our digital currency efforts in the Asia Pacific region. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, though I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there with you in person at this exciting event. And I'm looking forward to discussing this really exciting topic that we've spent a lot of time on that has potentially very far-reaching consequences for the entire ecosystem, whether it's consumers, merchants, businesses, banks, or entire economies. As you saw with the video that was presented at the beginning of the session, we've been very closely monitoring the space and have made significant investments here over the last few years. So what I'd like to do over the next 45 or so minutes is I'll plan to share a view of what is happening in the digital currency space from our vantage point, what specifically we're focused on as a company and how we're helping the ecosystem, and then identify some macro opportunities for collaboration with members in the audience, whether they're commercial banks, the central bank, or fintech partners, or anybody else that's interested in the ecosystem. So with that, let me just quickly walk you through the topics that I'm intending to cover. So there's really 4 parts to this. So first, I want to do a quick introduction to digital currency. While I recognize that many in the audience will have a fair bit of familiarity with what we mean when we say digital currency, it may be helpful as a group to provide an overview of the main types and how it works. Then we'll take a look at some of the key trends that we're observing in this space across the 3 main types of digital currency, specifically crypto, stablecoin, and central bank digital currency. Third, I want to spend a few minutes walking through Visa's areas of focus and how we're enabling the ecosystem. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with some concluding thoughts on areas of collaboration and some next steps potentially. So with that, let me get right into it and start with a quick introduction to the digital currency opportunity. What do we mean when we say digital currency, first and foremost, right? Digital currency, as we understand it, would be a digital version of cash, distinct from electronic money as we think about it today. And this is a digital version of cash that is controlled by private cryptographic keys. Essentially, these are bearer assets that allow the owner of the cryptographic key to own the currency itself. Again, quite distinct from how we think about electronic money today, which is still a representation on an electronic form of a liability that is held with a financial institution in some shape or form. When we say digital currency, we are actually talking about a digital token that represents cash. So it is analogous to physical cash in the digital realm. And we really think about three types of digital currency. So the first and foremost is cryptocurrency, which no doubt everybody in the audience is familiar with. It's been taking the headlines in the financial press for the last several years. It's fundamentally a non-sovereign digital currency that is operating on a distributed ledger technology backbone. So your typical examples of cryptocurrency here are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. Then we have stablecoin down the middle of the page. This is a private sector digital currency that is backed by fiat that is held at commercial banks. So the idea here is the private sector realized that there was an opportunity to mitigate some of the volatility associated with cryptocurrency and has introduced a solution called a stablecoin where the underlying token is still held typically one-to-one with fiat, and that fiat is held at commercial banks and is audited periodically and so on. And so some major stablecoins in the world today include the likes of USDC, and probably the most famous stablecoin that all of us have heard of but not used yet is Facebook's DM, which was formerly called the Libra. And then the newest addition to the digital currency family is central bank digital currency. So this is a sovereign fiat currency that is essentially tokenized and issued and backed by the central bank. Right? So China's ECNY, Sweden's e-krona, and a number of other examples in our region and globally are now starting to be introduced with central banks getting into the digital currency game. So then let's talk a little bit about how these digital currencies have come about and what the momentum in each has been, right? And we almost view these digital currencies not as three distinct siloed types, but a set of, it's a continuum of evolution, starting from cryptocurrencies, which were introduced circa 2008 with a white paper by an anonymous cryptographer known as Satoshi Nakamoto. And this was fundamentally an attempt to create new currencies that are independent or distinct from central bank money or government money. And as we know, there's been a tremendous amount of growth in recent years. The market cap of cryptocurrency has breached 1 trillion at the time of writing, but that's already gone to 2 trillion and beyond. The vast majority of this is still held in Bitcoin, which is still the original cryptocurrency. The backers of cryptocurrency will usually offer perceived benefits such as protection against inflation, perceived anonymity on crypto networks, the immutability of data due to the nature of public ledgers, and so on and so forth. However, in our view, despite the attention that cryptocurrencies have received in recent years, we believe they remain niche as a payment method and will likely continue to be niche as a payment method, which was the original intent. The extremely high volatility of crypto, the very limited acceptance of crypto to purchase goods and services, the lack of interoperability, the limited processing throughput, and so on, and the high energy use associated with crypto mining, which is very relevant in a world in which we're trying to mitigate the impact on the climate, are all, we believe, challenges that will prevent cryptocurrency from being mainstream as a payment method, though it does have tremendous appeal, as we're clearly seeing in the world markets today, as an asset class. So it's a net new type of asset or digital gold, but not yet quite a payment mechanism, which was the original intent. Then moving to stablecoin in the middle of the page. Stablecoins typically began about 4 or 5 years ago, primarily as a solution, as I said before, by the private sector to mitigate some of the challenges of cryptocurrency. And this is primarily the volatility associated with cryptocurrency, which prevents its use as a store of value or as a medium of exchange. And so we see stablecoins fundamentally as providing access to reserve currencies globally through crypto exchanges. They, again, typically issued by private players and are backed one-to-one with their fiat cousins with deposits held with commercial banks, therefore lowering their volatility. So this is also, though it doesn't get talked about nearly as much, stablecoin have also seen tremendous growth and have breached over $100 billion in total monetary base. And then lastly, the latest addition to the digital currency family is CBDC, as we said before. So this really, the announcements around CBDC really started generating a lot of momentum circa 2018, 2019. And this was largely driven by Facebook's announcement that it was pursuing a global stablecoin known as the Libra. The risk that central banks saw with that announcement was that there was potentially an impingement upon a sovereign monetary policy. And recognizing that there is clearly consumer demand for these types of digital tokens, a lot of central banks have decided to get into the game themselves. And so according to a recent BIS report, more than 80% of central banks say they will introduce a CBDC in some shape or form over the next 3 to 5 years. And a wide range of motivations are cited by central banks when it comes to why they would want to introduce a CBDC. So it could be a focus on the security of currency, continued public access to central bank money, and this is in particular relevant for emerging markets, greater financial inclusion, and so on and so forth, which are cited as the motivations for why one might pursue a central bank digital currency. And so that in a nutshell is how we view the distinct types of central bank digital currency, the distinct types of digital currency and how they're all tied in with each other. Before I spend some time on trends in each of these and what we're observing, I did want to make sure that we quickly walk through what a typical payment flow might look like, in particular for a permission payment flow transaction such as CBDC, more to bring this concept to life for the audience and kind of make sure we understand what the distinction is between, electronic money as we see it today and a future world in which CBDC or other permission payment flows might become a little bit more mainstream. So I'll start on the left-hand side of the page, the left 2/3, where in the blue you see what is called the infrastructure tier. So in terms of architecture, there's really 2 tiers here: the infrastructure tier and the payment tier. In the blue, you have the infrastructure tier, which is where let's assume that we're talking about a CBDC. Here, the central bank would issue and distribute the CBDC to intermediaries. And then in the payment tier, we have the intermediaries that could be a whole host of players that are then distributing these tokens to consumer and merchant wallets to facilitate payments. And so there's really 4 key players here. There's the central bank, which develops the system rules and issues the CBDC tokens. Then there are the intermediaries that are responsible for the distribution of the CBDC and in some cases the issuance. And the intermediary role can be played by a large variety of existing ecosystem players, whether it's banks, fintechs, consumer tech platforms, or what have you. And then we have the consumer and the merchant wallet players, and these are respectively using these wallets as the access points to the CBDC network to facilitate payments. And so then a typical payment flow is on the right-hand side of the page, and I'll walk through that step by step. So the first step is the central bank. This is step 0. The central bank really provisioning this digital currency into the ecosystem, right? So the digital currency tokens will get minted and then distributed to consumers through intermediaries. Each token is basically a unique string of information, such as the owner's identifier, the identifier of the issuing or the distributing intermediary, the amount of the currency associated with that particular token, and whatnot. So it's really a string that is representing that digital cash. And then step 1 is when a consumer wants to pay with their CBDC at a CBDC accepting merchant, the payment is initiated via the consumer wallet. So basically, I would walk up to a merchant to buy, let's say, a cup of coffee for 100 rupees. I would then use my wallet and use whatever payment mechanism that they wanted, whether it's a tap to pay or a card or a QR code. And essentially, my wallet would then be digitally signing this request with my cryptographic private key and sending that to the merchant wallet. And the merchant wallet in step 2 will receive that request, sign it with their own private key, and pass it on to the intermediary for validation. The intermediary then validates this request, authorizes it, and sends that on to the central bank. What then happens is very interesting, and it's quite distinct from most mechanisms for electronic payments as we know them today. And so this is what we would think of as a mint and burn, which tends to be a feature of most central bank digital currency implementations that we're seeing in the marketplace. So essentially, the central bank system would then destroy the original token and issue a new token that was accredited to the merchant's account. And so this would be the analogous exchange would be if I used a physical banknote for 100 rupees and paid for, as I said before, a cup of coffee. This would be akin to that banknote with a very unique serial number being destroyed on the spot and a new banknote being created out of thin air and handed to the merchant. And you can imagine that this is fundamentally a feature that is built in that allows for a degree of anti-double spending provisions and fraud protection and so on and so forth. And so in this way, the CBDC is transferred from the consumer wallet to the merchant wallet in real time. And you'll note here, especially for members of the audience that are familiar with electronic payments and how settlement and so on works, you'll note here that there is no separate settlement step. This is all happening in real time. And that's largely because there is no individual, there is no liability created on a bank account or a payment wallet. The actual asset is a bearer asset, and that's moving through the network. And so that is exactly the same way that a cash transaction would take place, where the minute I receive a note that is now mine and there is no need for a settlement step at the back end. That's essentially what is happening with the CBDC as well. So that in a nutshell, very quickly, was an introduction to CBDC and a quick view on how it works. What I wanted to spend the next few minutes doing, which is probably a lot more interesting and relevant for members of the audience, is to share some trends that we're observing from Visa's vantage point as a global network, as well as from our engagements with central banks and regulators, with clients, fintechs, and merchants around the world, what we're seeing when it comes to digital currency trends and use cases for digital currency across 3 types we talked about, so crypto, stablecoin, and CBDC. And I'll take each of those in turn. So let me start with cryptocurrency. And I don't need to spend a lot of time, I believe, articulating the trends in crypto, what's happening with crypto prices, and how many people are getting there, and so on and so forth. I think everybody that's a reader of the financial press and the daily FT would likely have a good understanding of what's happening with crypto generally. But what I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about was how we're seeing our clients, which are oftentimes mainstream financial institutions or merchants or new fintechs, starting to engage with cryptocurrency as it starts to become a little bit more mainstream. And so there's really 2 use cases that we typically see. The first is we allow, or financial institutions are allowing their customers or enabling the purchase of cryptocurrency under the auspices of that institution or that fintech. And the second use case that we're seeing is enabling a reward mechanism on fiat spend. So using crypto as a way to attract a new demographic that values that crypto and driving engagement and rewarding loyalty on fiat spend with crypto. And so I'll touch on each of those in turn. So enabling the purchase of cryptocurrency, this is something that we're starting to see a lot of, particularly with the global fintech community, and increasingly starting to see that with mainstream financial institutions or what we might think of as commercial banks as well. So you can see some examples on the page there. We have Robinhood, which as we know is a global zero-cost stock brokerage that has now enabled its users to buy and sell cryptocurrency. PayPal, about a year ago, has started to allow users around the world to buy and sell Bitcoin and Ether and Litecoin and others, and keep it within the PayPal umbrella. You've got Square's Cash App. So Square is as many might know, is a large fintech point of acceptance solution, and their Cash App also allows that buy and sell Bitcoin capability. And then increasingly, we're starting to see a number of commercial banks around the world, in particular the likes of DBS in Singapore, that are starting to offer these products as wealth management solutions to allow their users to buy and sell crypto. Obviously, where regulations permit it. But the the fundamental idea here is that financial institutions in markets where private digital currency trading is permitted are realizing that as consumers have a greater demand for cryptocurrency, they're essentially taking AUM and a part of their net worth away from the umbrella of the financial institution and moving it to crypto wallets and other forms of exchange, which fundamentally starts to be a little bit of essentially a drain on their AUM. And so the response is, why not just have these users keep their AUM with us? And the answer to that is essentially starting to offer wallets of their own, right? And then on top of that, we're seeing on the right-hand side of the page this idea that there is a large demographic, typically skewing towards younger users, that is very intrigued and interested in participating in the crypto universe. And so how can institutions start to take advantage of this feature and start to reward users for engagement? And so the answer has typically been to build loyalty rewards on top of fiat spend. So there's a few examples here. Fold is a crypto wallet that has essentially started to issue a Visa card that they would put on top of the crypto wallet and allow users to spend in fiat using that crypto card, but the store of value is the crypto that is stored with Fold. And what's unique here is that this Fold app would basically, or the Fold card would come with a Fold app. So every time I spend my card for say $5 again for a cup of coffee, I am then allowed to go into the app and spin a wheel. And depending on where my wheel lands, that's how much Bitcoin or a fraction of a Bitcoin I might get into my Fold wallet. So it's really gamifying that entire experience of spending money on this card credential, which then has driven engagement up tenfold over the last year because consumers are just fascinated by this idea that they could earn Bitcoin in this gamified fashion for everyday purchases. Similarly, you've got BlockFi, which is offering 1.5% Bitcoin back on every dollar you spend. And so that's a way almost of getting a token that has an potentially appreciating value associated with it. So all of these types of use cases are starting to see a tremendous amount of engagement. And again, we see for now largely fintechs and crypto wallets that are leading the charge on this, but more and more commercial financial institutions are starting to follow as well. So that's how we see people and our clients engage with crypto. Then I'll talk a little bit about stablecoin and what we see happening there. So as I said before, stablecoin has had also stratospheric growth in the last year or so, though it doesn't get noticed as much as a class as its crypto cousins. And you can see on the page, on the chart that we have on the screen in front of you, that stablecoins have also had, both in terms of the total circulating supply, which is analogous to the monetary base, but also in terms of the volume of transactions that are transacted on stablecoin. Both of those have seen a tremendous amount of growth and grown nearly tenfold in the last year. So the blue bars is the monetary supply, and that is reaching nearly $100 billion worldwide. And you've got the monthly volume, which is the spend on stablecoins, and that's been growing rapidly as well. And what's driving that change is really a few distinct use cases that we're observing, which is on the next page, and I'll just wait for that to pop up. So there's really three primary use cases that we see. The first is, on the left-hand side, trade settlement for crypto assets and non-fungible tokens. So stablecoins ultimately in the crypto economy are the de facto unit that allow for digital commodity trading. So it's a lot easier for consumers to move money from one type of crypto into stablecoin and hold that stablecoin as a reserve instead of moving it to fiat. The transaction costs associated with moving to fiat are significantly higher. So stablecoin essentially lubricate the entire crypto economy. And this is starting to then extend into emerging parts of the crypto economy, such as crypto collectibles and art, NFTs, and so on. So trade settlement for crypto assets is one of the largest use cases. But even beyond the crypto universe, we're seeing a few use cases such as emerging B2B payment flows. So there's a growing number of companies, both in the crypto industry and beyond, that are starting to use stablecoin as a way to hold dollar or other reserve currencies in their treasury accounts and pay global vendors and remote employees through these stablecoins. So this is something that we would expect would continue to expand over time. And then third on the page, and most interesting, we're starting to see stablecoin be the unit of account and the underlying medium of exchange in the fast emerging DeFi space, so decentralized finance, which relies on the blockchain to conduct peer-to-peer type transactions for most financial institutions or financial institution type transactions. They typically would end up using stablecoin as the way to move money around. So if I'm typically, let's say, entering into an escrow agreement with another user for a contract, I would get into that agreement, have a smart contract that sits on the blockchain and is underpinned by stablecoin. And when the escrow is triggered, the smart contract will automatically move the stablecoin from my account to the user's account. And that's basically stablecoin by nature of being a smart currency, by nature of being natively on the blockchain would enable that. So those are some of the use cases that we're seeing when it comes to stablecoins, and we expect that to continue to have a lot of momentum. And we're heavily investing in the space to participate with private sector stablecoin providers around the world. And then lastly, when it comes to CBDCs, what are we seeing here, and where is the innovation happening? And I think the short answer is the innovation is happening really all around the world. And so the map I have on the page in front of you is really showing you three types of countries. So the countries that are shaded in blue have an active CBDC pilot in some shape or form that is running today. Then you've got the countries that are in orange that have active research projects, and those could vary from very early stage research to significantly more advanced. And then you've got countries that are not really pursuing CBDC at this stage and this point in time. And you could take a quick look at this and just grasp that practically every major economy in the world, be it in the West, be it in the Asia Pacific region, is really exploring CBDC in some shape or form. Right? And in Asia Pacific in particular, you've got a number of economies that are leading the charge, and I would almost categorize it as Asia Pacific is really at the forefront of innovation when it comes to CBDC. And so a few notable projects, obviously we talked about the ECNY in mainland China, which is probably the most advanced digital currency project anywhere in the world, that is in very advanced pilots and likely to be launched early next year to coincide with the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. Other markets in the region, such as Hong Kong and Thailand, have pretty advanced CBDC projects. You've got the Bank of Japan, the Reserve Bank of Australia, all considering CBDC. Singapore has had long-standing CBDC projects. And closer to the South Asian neighborhood, I believe Sri Lanka, of course, is considering the issuance of a CBDC as well. The RBI has recently announced that it intends to carry forward a digital rupee. So there's a lot of activity that's happening in the space in our region in particular. And given all this activity, I wanted to share our views on what we believe will be some of the trends that drive central bank digital currency as it potentially starts to become mainstream in Asia Pacific economies around the world. And so there's Asia Pacific economies and in around the world. And so there's really 5 trends that we observe when it comes to CBDC, and I'll touch on each of those in turn. So the first is, we don't believe there will be a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to CBDC. We do believe that every market needs to have its own approach to determining a CBDC rollout and determining what type of CBDC is right for that particular landscape. But we generally see 2 variants of CBDC, and most markets sort of coalesce around these 2 broad strokes variants, with obviously market-specific nuances in between each. And so the first is markets that want to focus on streamlining their interbank payments. And so this to date includes Singapore and Australia, are usually exploring a wholesale CBDC for interbank payments. At the other end of the spectrum, markets that are primarily focused on financial inclusion, driving interoperability, and so on, are turning to retail use cases. So this is CBDC that's in the hands of consumers and merchants for everyday retail use cases. This obviously includes China and a whole host of other markets in the Asia Pacific region that might be going down this path. So that's trend number 1. Trend number 2 is, in our viewpoint, we believe that a successful CBDC rollout requires very clear guiding principles for 3 groups of constituencies. First is banks, fintechs, and then merchants. We believe for number 1, banks and commercial bank readiness is going to be very critical for all models. As I described earlier in the payment flow, most implementations of a CBDC are likely to take a two-tier structure, which means that intermediaries such as banks will have a critical role to play. And as most of these models would leverage the partnership between the central bank and private commercial banks, we need to recognize that most financial institutions will have very strong incentives to participate in CBDC, and therefore need to be ready to successfully integrate and support this new digital currency. And so that could mean, having a clear sense of what types of investments are needed, both the front end and the back end, which I'll touch on shortly. Next, the other community here is the fintech community. In our view, a CBDC that allows for fintechs and other innovators to innovate around the edges while maintaining a stable core and drive new use cases will ultimately drive much greater adoption from merchants and from consumers. And so having a clear framework for innovation and developing a developer-friendly ecosystem is going to be very necessary for adoption. And then lastly, for any type of retail CBDC, merchant acceptance is, of course, key to extend the reach and usage. Then trend number 3, we fundamentally expect that CBDCs will complement rather than replace existing payment infrastructure, leading to, as we said before, a two-tier monetary system architecture. Banks will continue to play a leading role in providing access and utility, and consumers, we hope and expect, will be able to use their current methods, and CBDC will mold itself into existing behaviors and platforms rather than be a standalone new form of payment. Fourth, despite all this, despite the very critical role of the existing ecosystem to support CBDC, we do expect that ecosystem roles will evolve as existing and new players start to participate in CBDC. We expect new entrants, we expect new business models, and you can imagine, for instance, if in the future, for me as a consumer, the way to access my CBDC could either be through my bank app wallet, or it could be through a consumer tech platform such as a Google or Facebook or a local wallet provider. That starts to almost create new terms of competition for financial institutions, because you're now competing with the consumer tech platforms for attention and for traffic, because you're ultimately providing the same utility, which is providing the access point to the CBDC, but you're now competing with digital natives to drive traction to your platform. And so that requires a different set of investments and a different way of approaching how you think about competition than has existed today. And that leads me to my last point, which is, in order to plan for this change, we believe that participants will need to invest in new capabilities and infrastructure to capture these opportunities in the CBDC environment. So on the front end, as I said before, the streamlined user experiences for digital interfaces will become absolutely critical, and banks will need to invest here. But on the back end, digital currency enablement will require investments in technology to settle or to custody these new digital tokens and make it secure. So there's a long way to go in terms of getting the traditional banking infrastructure up to scratch to be able to support digital currency. And again, we believe that central banks will have a really important role to play in making it clear to the ecosystem what the roadmap is for laying out a CBDC in the future. And so that covers our section on the trends that we see in the ecosystem. We talked about crypto, we talked about stablecoin, we talked about what we're seeing with CBDC. And then the last little bit of the section, and I'll do this relatively quickly, what I wanted to give you a flavor for is how Visa is supporting digital currency and what our areas of focus are. So I'll primarily spend the time on this page here. We really think about our key areas of focus being in 3 buckets that you're able to see on the page. The first is our digital currency products and partnerships. The second is our digital currency innovation hub. And the third is our research and thought leadership area, which is really us helping build out the ecosystem by helping develop standards for players around the world. And so in the products and partnerships down the left-hand side of the page, what we're focused on is driving interoperability between the fiat and the digital currency ecosystem. So we're working with some of the leading digital currency wallets around the world under that heading of digital currency wallet partnerships to issue Visa credentials and expand merchant acceptance of digital currency using fiat rails. So starting to integrate our network, which is primarily a fiat-based network, with digital currency networks and enabling spend off digital currency tokens, but with merchants accepting fiat and ultimately driving greater adoption of digital currency in that way. Second, we continue to explore new opportunities for digital currency flows in non-traditional payment environments. So whether it's B2B, government to business, government to consumer, what have you, we're developing new networks and new natively digital currency capable networks to drive these flows. The third is we're the first major network to pioneer native digital currency settlement. And so we're now piloting the capability to settle with our partners in stablecoin. And ultimately, we would expect that to extend that to CBDC, and we would expect to be able to work with central banks around the world and natively settle and accept CBDC or stablecoin to lubricate the flows of these transactions through the ecosystem. And then lastly, we're also helping our clients make the transition to the digital currency universe by building APIs that can enable them to access a set of services on the back end in order to offer digital currency capabilities to their own clients. I'll quickly cover off on what we're doing in the Digital Currency Innovation Hub. So this is really our front and center hub, which is based in Singapore and serves the Asia Pacific region, where we're trying to work with our partners across central banks and regulators and commercial banks, fintechs, to really chart out the course of the digital currency ecosystem. And so together discover industry trends and lay out a roadmap for participation, co-create new concepts in a sandbox to start to flesh out use cases and consumer journeys, and then ultimately build proofs of concept using those use cases and start to bring some of these ideas to life. And then lastly, our research and thought leadership area is something that we've got dedicated teams of Visa research scientists around the world that are working with regulators and standard setting bodies such as the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF and others in helping develop standards and protocols that make the system more secure and scalable. And a couple of examples is, for instance, we've released a white paper on how to enable offline transactions because we recognize in particular emerging markets, one of the financial inclusion goals is to drive digital currency adoption to the long tail of consumers that perhaps reside in rural areas or in areas with limited network access. It is critical that they have offline capability in order to not be locked out of this innovation. And so how can we enable offline transactions? We've got a standard, a protocol that we've developed to facilitate that. Similarly, we've driven a protocol to facilitate the interoperability between various types of digital currency as well as our own fiat networks as they exist today. So what I'll do over the next just a couple of minutes is double click on a couple of these, and then I'll end my presentation. And so I'll start with what we're doing when it comes to products and partnerships. And so as I said before, the idea here is that we're working with some of the world's largest crypto wallets, and in the future, this would extend to financial institutions that start to offer crypto wallets, to issue Visa cards, essentially to create a bridge between the crypto and the fiat universes. So as an example, we've got a Coinbase, which is one of the world's largest crypto wallets, Coinbase debit card that is a Visa credential. And it's essentially allowing a user at Coinbase, let's say I'm a user, I have a Bitcoin stored in my Coinbase account. I can't actually use that to purchase goods and services because nobody really accepts Bitcoin directly. But using my Visa card, I can essentially pay for anything, retail purchase, just the way that I would do today. And that merchant would receive the funds in fiat, just the way they do today. Visa would receive the funds in fiat as well. Coinbase would make the conversion from crypto to fiat and remit the funds to us. And the user is able to spend against their Bitcoin store of value. And so essentially you've got a win-win-win situation where the user is able to use the store of value to make purchases. Coinbase makes a margin on these transactions. Visa and our merchants are able to receive these funds. And so fundamentally, by bridging the ecosystems, we've created more consumer choice and more merchant PV at the same time. And so we continue to extend these across consumer use cases as well as business payouts and spending. Similarly, another area that I'll touch on when it comes to how we're enabling the ecosystem is driving APIs that our partners and clients can use instead of building their own solutions from scratch. You can use a Visa API, which is obviously a trusted partner for our financial institution clients, and you can use a whole set of back-end services, whether they're offered by Visa or by our partners on a white label basis. And so this, essentially linking the API to, let's say, a mobile banking app And on the back end, you can access the ability to buy, sell crypto, to store that crypto, and a range of other offerings that will get developed over time. So in a much shorter time frame than developing these solutions from scratch, commercial banks can start to offer these capabilities, obviously regulation permitting in every market, to their own clients, and offer them the ability to buy, sell, or use digital currency in some shape or form. That's when it comes to our cryptocurrency partnerships and product areas. As I said before, one of the other main focus areas we have is also our research and thought leadership, and there's a set of areas that we're working on when it comes to security, interoperability, auditability, offline capability. Like I said, I'll touch on a couple of areas quickly. Offline capability, as I said, we've developed a set of protocols to allow for temporary offline transactions in areas where networks might be a little bit more intermittent. So today, you need network connectivity for most digital payments, and certainly for all digital currency payments. And so if the network is down, there is no ability to have a transaction. So essentially that commerce has stopped. Where tomorrow, what we would enable is a way to use digital currency offline for short periods of time within certain parameters using hardware that is capable of holding on to digital currency, and ultimately using point-to-point or Bluetooth technology such as NFC or Bluetooth, as I said, to be able to move this money around, and then ultimately sync this transaction back with an online system when you regain full connectivity. So we've got a protocol out in the public realm to facilitate these types of transactions. That's something that we have ongoing discussions with central banks around the world quite closely. Similarly, on the next page, we've built a protocol to allow interoperability for central bank digital currency payments and for all manner of digital currency payments. So recognizing that most countries are developing CBDC primarily for a domestic audience today, we believe that we have a role to play in facilitating cross-border transactions for CBDC, but also to connect CBDC to private sector digital currency networks or to fiat networks. And so we've got a protocol called the Universal Payment Channels, which is again out in the public realm that we've developed, and something that we're working with central banks quite closely on. And the last bit I'll touch on is we continue to work very closely with central banks to drive adoption of CBDC, and with our partner Consensus, which is an infrastructure provider, we've developed a protocol, or a solution rather, called CBDC Go, which really enables rapid adoption of CBDC by using existing payment experiences, existing cards, existing Web 2.0 user experiences, so allowing a fast scale up and then a steady migration to the future state of a CBDC platform. So this particular solution was presented at the Monetary Authority of Singapore's Global CBDC Challenge in conjunction with the Singapore FinTech Festival, which just concluded. And we were the winners of that Global CBDC Challenge. So this is something that we look forward to bringing out to the rest of the ecosystem around the world. That concludes my session in terms of what Visa is working on. The very last bit that I'll leave the audience with is just some areas for collaboration, both with Visa and amongst members of the audience and the ecosystem themselves. There's a whole host of opportunities that are out there in terms of digital currencies, and it really is the right opportunity to start getting your organizations familiar with what digital currency is and what's possible here is now, because there are a set of opportunities whether it comes to loyalty and rewards, offering digital wallets, enabling investments, developing custody, whether you're a merchant that is looking to accept digital currencies. There's a lot to explore. And so we look forward to working with you in order to facilitate this. We've got a set of solutions. We've got a set of sandbox capabilities that we can work with you to co-develop. And we're really looking forward to engaging with the financial services community in Sri Lanka to start to bring these products to market, and with the central bank, of course, to engage on policy discussions and offer our inputs on what might be the right direction for Sri Lanka to take when it comes to digital currency. And so with that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak at this great event. Really looking forward to engaging with you further on this exciting topic of digital currency, and I'm sure there'll be lots of space for ongoing collaboration in the future. Thank you very much.
A very big thank you goes out to Akash Devekar, Senior Director, Corporate Strategy, Visa Asia Pacific. Shall we all give him a good round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for addressing remotely. And he very well laid the foundation for this morning's session, which is banking, payments and settlements and digital currencies. And he took us through the journey of digital currencies and also the trends and how it could all work. And with that, we're now moving into the guest speech this morning of our session. And to deliver it, I invite the Director and Legal Advisor at ICTA, Mr. Jayantha Fernando. I would like to introduce him in this way. With over 20 years international and Southeast Asian experience in a broad range of ICT legal and policy issues, he is an attorney by profession with a specialized master's degree in law, in telecommunications and IT law. He pioneered drafting of several ICT-related legislation. He gave leadership to Sri Lanka's accession to the Budapest Cybercrime Convention in 2015 and Sri Lanka's ratification of the UN Electronic Communications Convention 2016, both first for South Asia. He was responsible for drafting Sri Lanka's Electronic Transactions Act, Computer Crimes Act, and advised legal draftsmen on the final draft of the payment and settlement systems. He chairs Sri Lanka's Data Protection Law Drafting Committee. In addition, he has helped review and draft laws of several other countries, including Fiji, where he serves as an advisor to Attorney General and Minister of Finance. In recognition of 22 years of service in the sphere of digital policies and laws, he was presented a Lifetime Achievement Award at the National 01 Digital Awards in 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all put a good round of applause and welcome Mr. Jayantha Fernando, Director and Legal Advisor at ICTA.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My good friend Nista and Boshan and Vasantha, thanks for putting in place another fantastic series. I believe it is the 8th in your series of cybersecurity summits that have been held periodically. We are in challenging times, as noted by Nista in his welcoming speech, and it is my privilege, and I thank the hosts today for making us and all my colleagues who are involved in these initiatives to be part of the thematic session towards a secure new normal. Now, we are on this session on digital banking, digital payments, and initiatives such as digital currencies and so on and so forth. The reality is that a couple of provisos or caveats I would like to table before we kick off this brief session, and I'd like to title my session around the enabling laws, policies that are needed to ensure trust and confidence for users to adopt these technologies. We are at an era, even in Sri Lanka, as quite appropriately noted by the keynote speaker from Visa, Central Bank and its stakeholders are at the threshold of moving in the direction of adopting new and innovative measures, even towards considering virtual currency exchanges in Sri Lanka. Of course, I must say that I'm not authorized to give a precursor to what is ongoing. My good friend, the Assistant Governor of the Central Bank, Darvasiri Kumaratunga, is here, and at the next panel, maybe we can share some insights. But we are at the point of finalizing the recommendations in that committee, which was triggered from a interdepartmental committee of the Central Bank, and now we have a variety of stakeholders from Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General's Department, Sri Lanka CERT, working together to formulate a set of recommendations that would set the stage for new policies and measures that would give choices to end users with regard to the use of crypto, with regard to the use of maybe potentially stable coin or CBDC. The exact approach and the mode, manner, and the timing of these interventions is to be decided by the Monetary Board of Sri Lanka. We all heard both from the chief guest as well as the keynote speaker that the impact of these modern trends on monetary policy is significant. It goes without saying that technology is moving rapidly, and often when it comes to nation states, sovereign states, we are behind technology. The policymakers are behind technology, obviously. Lawyers are further behind. And then you have the judges, parliamentarians who have to enact laws and implement laws. It is a universal phenomenon that law policy measures are always behind technology advancements, as noted even by the keynote speaker, who aptly said that quite a lot of their initiatives are still under consideration and subject to research findings. And it was appropriately noted that security and privacy challenges are yet to be addressed. And one half of my presentation today would deal with some of the new additions to the policy landscape that would hopefully create consumer trust and confidence, because we see as a global pattern, except in countries which are relatively small like Singapore, Estonia, where the population base is very rather small comparatively, the adoption of new techniques, including virtual currencies, in larger societies is few and far between. So the adoption is very, very slow. Do all these innovations trickle down to the masses to benefit the rural economy that will result in net inflows to a country? These are the questions policymakers may have to answer before they venture into new, novel, innovative methods, whether it is central bank digital currency, stable coin, or crypto. The choices are many, but what is appropriate to boost inward revenue is perhaps what might determine the course the policymakers led by the central bank, monetary board, and other regulators would charter along the way. One point that I want to highlight as part of this overview is that the impact on monetary policy on whatever approach Sri Lanka adopts in terms of virtual currencies is significant. Our Monetary Law Act is not up to date. It doesn't deal sufficiently with this subject matter. So comprehensive amendments may have to be made to the Monetary Law Act as going to be recommended by our committee dealing with virtual currencies at Central Bank. Then of course, our Payment and Settlement Systems Act is being quite modern. However, it has been there since 2005. Many things have happened since 2005 when the Act number 28 of 2005 was introduced. Of course, the Foreign Exchange Act was modernized in 2017. However, we all know the regulations from the Foreign Exchange Department of Central Bank, which prohibits our citizens from engaging in crypto activities using our payment devices. So these rigid control measures are being reviewed, and going further, one option this committee is looking at right now, and hopefully maybe in a week or 2 weeks, at least by mid-December, the report will be finalized. They are considering whether there should be a pilot operation by way of a virtual currency being recognized as an asset class, regulated both by Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the Securities and Exchange Commission, with a separate legal framework governing that, enabling the Central Bank and Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka to regulate that exchange in relation and also facilitate and monitor the inward and outflows of currencies out of these exchanges. So we are in challenging times, and a lot of work is being done in this area, and in that context, creating trust and confidence to consumers who are in the field of who may have to adopt these innovations is an area we need to consider, and that would be my primary focus. So in Sri Lanka's digital law landscape, we have many developments that have taken shape. I mentioned some of these briefly earlier and in previous presentations, but what is to be noted, as indicated in yellow, are the international standards that we may have to comply with, or if our countries to benefit from digital innovations, including digital payments, in a rapid manner, and enable the rural community to adopt it. There is a need for Sri Lanka to not miss the bus, and therefore we need to benefit from the international norms and standards that are available. So historically, Sri Lanka has been in the digital law landscape doing that. We see that in the Electronic Transactions Act and in the cybercrime domain. The opening video today was quite enlightening. We will come to that scenario further down. How the challenging digital landscape, and with new payment and settlement and digital options coming into being, the challenges associated with dealing with abuse scenarios can be handled only if we are part of international partnership and not just have a standalone legal regime. And of course, the new kid on the block, which will be a focus towards the latter part of my presentation, will be on the data protection legal framework that was published as a bill last Thursday, 25th of November 2021. So I'll enlighten you where certain international standards came in and its relevance to protect privacy of citizens in the digital era, and the reason why we adopt a particular set of international standards currently available. But what is important is that in the context of the monetary law landscape, The payment and settlement systems law and other laws have also been benchmarked to international law standards. And I'd like to commend the central bank team for the pioneering steps, despite challenges they have on a regular basis, to adopt international best practices from time to time. And then, of course, we have the connectivity piece, where our TRC DG has taken some lead initiatives so that the rural community can have access to these technologies. On the digital transactions, electronic commerce landscape, we saw Sri Lanka being an early adopter to this international standard, stemming from a universal international law instrument called the UN Electronic Communications Convention, that is a short name, but the long title is given here. United Nations Convention on the Use of Electronic Communications in International Contracts. I go sometimes breathless when I have to put that long title, but it's not a big document. It's a document with about 14, 15 articles, simply to give legal recognition or give guidance to countries adopting domestic legislation on the minimum standards they have to follow in relation to electronic equivalence of a writing, electronic equivalence of a electronic signature or a handwritten signature, and goes further to deal with automated messaging systems without human intervention, and how contracts can be formulated within that framework with AI and other tools being available in contemporary times. So this became an international gold standard adopted some decades, almost more than a decade and a half ago. And Sri Lanka, as you would see here, became one of the early adopters of this standard. We were part of the drafting committee that led to drafting of that instrument. So the Sri Lankan electronic transactions law basically mirrors, captures the fundamental principles of that international universal treaty or binding instrument. And a couple of years ago, Sri Lanka took steps to ratify and domestically adopt this international standard by amending our legislation. As a result, Sri Lanka's best practice is being looked at by other countries. Fiji is a notable example. The Honorable Attorney General, who is also the Minister of Finance of Fiji, has basically invited Sri Lanka to share their expertise in this subject area, and we see them domestically adopting a law similar to Sri Lanka, and many other Pacific islands are doing the same. Then of course, there are other countries joining that fold, including Bahrain. Last year became a state party to the same arrangement. And of course, Singapore was one of the first, along with China, to adopt the standard, which would enable not only cross-border electronic commerce, electronic business contract to be mutually recognized, but also sets the stage for digital authentication standards to be recognized for cross-border trade, business, and other related transactions. That would set an environment for secure trade commerce, perhaps leading to new digital frontiers through the adoption of whatever virtual currency or asset class that central bank and SEC chooses to adopt in future. Countries like Australia and United States are on the road, almost completed their domestic process. Of course, those are complex countries that have to amend their domestic state law to adopt this global standard. So Sri Lanka ratified this instrument and adopted suitable amendments in 2017 and onboarded our country to a global standard in relation to this electronic digital transactions domain. What that has meant is that our digital adoption has been fast-tracked in a way, but still we see challenges among stakeholders, user communities, doubts in the people's mind as to whether these legal frontiers are truly available to businesses and citizens. I think the lack of awareness still is pretty much at the stage of infancy, and I think more needs to be done by folks, including Daily FT, and they are doing that to educate the masses on the availability of these standards. So one development stemming from this international standard is the norms available in Sri Lanka for use of digital certificates and electronic signatures. We have had the sectoral certificate service provider under the Electronic Transactions Act for some time. They were compelled to move in the direction of adopting an ISO 27000 as well as a PCI DSS standard, that is a global payment system standard, and audit their digital signing methods to enable all banks, including international banks located in Sri Lanka, to participate in the digital payment ecosystem. As a result, we were the second in South Asia, in Asia Pacific region, to adopt a framework where real-time cross settlements, interbank payment, as well as SEFT and other payment methods were introduced. So the question is whether these techniques can lead to providing a secure frontier for the next wave of electronic payment digital currency adoption in Sri Lanka. I would say it does. So for example, the root certificate or the root in a digital certificate environment, you have a root, a country-specific hierarchy. The root certificate was launched last year in 2020 on Valentine's Day after a 6-year complex process that led to us in Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka CERT engineers played a pioneering role with Central Bank here. They adopted the Web Trust standard stemming from Canada, Philippines, and Singapore kind of environment. So a lot of work had to be done to train experts here domestically to adopt that. And in view of that development, what we saw in recent times was that the judges, lawyers became more comfortable to give directions to our stakeholders to onboard digital technologies using authentication measures. And the most recent is where the Attorney General gave a ruling for the Customs Department to have digital certificates issued to all their participating stakeholders to enable online customs declarations submission through their technology platform. So that development was unique, and of course that was backed by a directive from the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on Customs Procedures that gave a ruling in June 2021, all because of the fact that there was no excuse with regard to the adoption of electronic signature standards in Sri Lanka. It would meet the requirements or even meet a higher standard than a paper-based handwriting, which can be tampered with. In the use of a secure digital transaction where secure authentication methods are used, any tampering would be detected by digital forensic means better than a handwritten physical paper-based signing method. So we saw these adoptions happening in recent times, and more work needs to be done in terms of awareness and skills development. Moving on to threats, challenges, abuse in the digital era, which was, I think, the theme coming from the video we saw this morning. In these new frontiers of digital crime, we have an acronym problem. People call it digital crime, internet crime, IT crime, cyber crime. We are losing count of the terminology. Well, forget terminology apart. International bodies like even the United Nations cannot agree on a terminology. So there's a lot to be desired in this subject in terms of legal evolution. The challenges are many. The victims of cyber-related issues may be in one country, but as we saw in the examples from that video, the criminals may be coordinating from number of locations. We lawyers, the judges, and the legal systems of a sovereign state is bounded by our jurisdictional parameters or limits. We are bounded by our laws, our court. That's it. But are cyber criminals bound by these? Ask yourself that question. No. They just can go forum shopping and looking at a jurisdiction which is a weak frontier to locate their criminal behavior. And now, in the modern day, we have crime as a service being offered by those in the dark net. So how do law enforcement entities detect and manage and mitigate these challenging scenarios? In a world where jurisdiction does not exist for those who commit crime, and it is in this context that global standards have sought to evolve in recent times to provide for law enforcement to collaborate with other countries on a real-time basis, and that was also not enough in recent examples we saw. We also saw an episode where Sri Lanka was a recipient of proceeds of crime coming from a Bangladesh central bank. Their foreign reserve account was hacked in the United States. Proceeds of the crime was transferred to a number of countries in the Asia-Pacific region. But Sri Lanka became the only country in that ecosystem to return the money that came back to Bangladesh, and we became the entity that actually blew the whistle and notified our the corresponding bank, which was the Deutsche Bank, that such an episode happened. Hats off to the young lady who was a desk manager at that time at the Pan Asia Bank in Kolpiti, who ensured that Sri Lanka got a clean record of that ecosystem. But out of that incident came an interesting lesson. Which country has the legal right to investigate the offense? Is it Bangladesh, Philippines, China, Sri Lanka, or the United States, or all countries working together collaboratively? Are the law enforcement entities equipped with legal tools and digital forensic expertise to deal with the subject? Do we have to find out-of-the-box approaches to these challenges by engaging the private sector? In addressing these challenges, we do not have a universal legal tool, but over the years, this has become the primary tool that has been available by a group of countries, primarily working together to develop an international law standard, and it provides for measures to identify criminal offenses in this subject, provide for procedural tools, and going further, provides for real-time electronic evidence gathering from foreign service providers through international cooperation measures that have set the stage for close to 76 countries adopting this standard. And of course, about 130 countries have used that standard when it comes to drafting their national legislation. So Sri Lanka became the first country in South Asia to onboard the Budapest Cybercrime Convention after many years of negotiations. To be honest, our negotiations started on the 15th of July 2008, around that time, after our Computer Crimes Act was enacted. In October 2008, we embarked on that process, culminating in a series of amendments to our law, including our mutual assistance law amended in 2018. And of course, the new frontiers on this subject is that in protecting children online, more work needs to be done. The policymakers have recognized that at the Ministry of Justice, and Ministry of Justice is playing a lead role now in identifying the gaps and providing for new amendments to legislation, including the obscene publications law that will soon come out in the near future. On the subject of privacy and security, my last area in my guest speech today, this morning, which would potentially create greater consumer trust and confidence in the context of digital banking, digital currency adoption. We saw in recent times, Central Bank of Sri Lanka has now, they are almost ready with regard to issuing potentially a legal framework that would facilitate full-fledged digital banking. We all know we are using our apps and internet banking channels to do fund transfers. Well, those are available, but I believe the central bank is opening a new corridor for full-fledged digital banking to take shape in our country. So in that context, how will privacy and security be enabled? So on that side, what I need to emphasize again is the need to adopt an international law standard. This subject of privacy data protection has been around for years. The origins stem from an international standard called the OECD Privacy Guidelines that set the stage for a number of global interventions, including the European Union directives that have been in place for many decades, that led to a level of maturity in that economic frontier called the European Union, and they adopted the European data protection regulations. The end result of the GDPR that became effective in 2018 was that it impacted international trade, impacting even Sri Lankan businesses, investors going and seeking to reach out to new markets. The question often being raised when our stock exchange or SEC would go on an investment drive is, do we have adequate, meaningful measures to protect financial data corresponding to individual data in Sri Lanka? If not, well, let's think about high-end investors at a later time. Same became true when our tourism authorities were doing marketing drives in Europe and many other countries. So it became a sort of a non-tariff barrier in trading with Europe and other countries having high standards relating to data protection norms. So Sri Lanka worked, we had a joint public-private committee that worked together with experts that adopted and looked at number of available standards. And I'm pleased to inform you that on the 25th of November, last Thursday, Sri Lanka gazetted a bill for the first time in our history, which is available for public review. Of course, there's nothing called a perfect law. I must say, ladies and gentlemen, all these laws, policies can be further refined as we go along. Further comments may be forthcoming with regard to the duration that this law would require for proper adoption, even by our SMEs. I'm mindful, can I have a few minutes? Yeah, so I think I'm almost coming to the end of my presentation, but I will skim through a few aspects, notably the legal standards that were looked at in adopting the latest data protection legal framework. All these international standards were looked at, but more importantly, several rounds of stakeholder consultations were carried out. The first draft framework of the bill was published by the Ministry of Digital Technologies in June 2019. And since then, a number of stakeholder rounds were conducted, including with specialized groups, including with FITIS/COM Ceylon Chamber. And after that, we saw a large number of written submissions, even from global digital platform service providers who basically sought to make submissions on the norms that we would create to bind themselves to this standard, and how comfortable or whether they would be uncomfortable in adopting these standards. So there was a lot of discussion taking place around with about 30 different players globally as well as in Sri Lanka, and that helped to nourish the framework that was adopted recently. So the purpose of the law is to provide for the regulation and processing of personal data, and to identify and strengthen rights of data subjects, and to create an independent regulator. On the question of personal data, any information that can identify a data subject directly or indirectly by reference to unique identifiers or one or more factors, including physical, biological factors, is a basis to identify what is meant by personal data. So it doesn't protect company data or other commercial data. Those are protected under other laws like the Intellectual Property Act. The trade secrets provision would protect commercial data. Then of course a company law as well as the SEC statute would have minimum disclosure obligations on company with regard to their financial accountability measures that need to be disclosed. So the rights of data subjects identified as natural persons, alive or deceased, to whom the personal data relates, is what is sought to be protected under the law. And if you look at the application, you would see somewhere, I don't know whether these boxes are very visible, application would happen not just to government and private sector players that would collect data in Sri Lanka, but look at entities that might target persons in Sri Lanka to offer goods and services at a global level. So even global digital platform providers, as well as even those who are providing virtual currency, cryptocurrency related trading platforms from outside Sri Lanka targeting citizens in Sri Lanka would be caught up under the data protection legal framework. So the concept of control and processor have been defined. Those entities that collect data of citizens and process them would be known as controllers. We have given some examples in the middle layer. And the third parties who are sourced to manage data of an organization would be considered a processor. So you find, for example, large telco players would outsource their billing, including some of the banks have outsourced their invoice generation, account information, the monthly account details to be generated through outsourced entities. Those entities will be known as processors, who will also be regulated with minimum standards under the Act. So in talks of minimum standards, we have certain principles for data protection processing in Part 1, and of course the rights of individuals are spelled out here. to access, withdraw consent, and to maybe amend information about us held by institutions that have our data. Of course, the controllers and entities have the right to refuse such request on lawful grounds specified in the law. What is interesting for those in the cybersecurity domain is an area marked in yellow here under Part 3 of the Data Protection Bill. There is a provision here to do data protection impact assessments, but most importantly, for the first time, some measures called the data breach notification measures have also been introduced. All the large, small SME entities that are engaged in processing personal data may have to ensure minimum standards with regard to their cyber security, data privacy norms, and be guided by professionals in that direction so that we will be able to better protect and create consumer confidence for proper adoption of digital technologies by our citizens at large. A new data protection authority will be created, and what we have done here is something different to what other countries have done. Without imposing sanctions, penalties in the first instance, there's an opportunity for directives to be issued by the authority to enable those organizations who are out of the rail to get back to the rail track and to do course correction. So that is something that is novel in the statute, and of course future engagements and priorities have been noted here. The establishments of a new regulatory authority is mandatory, and the nature of that entity and how it functions will decide on the level of confidence it would create in the Sri Lankan ecosystem. But most notably, new regulations and rules have to be formulated under that law. But above all, area where the organizers perhaps have taken a lead in recent times is to build capacity. There will be new vistas of opportunities for professionals in this field, privacy professionals who are certified and have the ability to advise organizations on the new standards that they have to adhere. So centers like CICRA perhaps can run courses on training privacy professionals to meet minimum standards as certified by the Data Protection Authority based on international standards, because cross-border data flow for BPM sector will be contingent on the nature of the ecosystem you all stakeholders create to make this bill meaningful and effective as an investment tool to generate foreign revenue for the country. Last point, but not the least, on the cybersecurity legislation, we'll be discussing this over the panel. This is still in the making. The challenges associated with this we'll be discussing perhaps after the break during the panel discussion. But what is important is that international norms and standards have been varying on cybersecurity because of the superpowers engaged in cross-border diplomacy or some kind of trade wars in recent times. So we don't see a universal instrument governing laws relating to cybersecurity yet, right? As a result, there are soft law approaches taken by countries. So Sri Lanka is looking at a soft law approach with administrative law mechanisms to compel holders of critical information infrastructure or owners of the CII to fulfill certain minimum standards so as to ensure they create a cyber hygienic ecosystem, again to ensure confidence and trust for public to take part in the digital ecosystem. So the draft bill on the subject was under construction for some time. There was a clash with how the defense cyber and the civilian cyber should take place around latter part of 2019, but that issue has now been settled, thankfully. So the defense cyber Command and the civilian cybersecurity legislation is going hand in hand as separate pieces of legislation, and hopefully will be finalized by sometime next year in 2022. You can have a separate program to discuss that. With that note, thank you, Nishta, thank you, Bhushan, and colleagues for inviting me, and hopefully we may have a further interaction. And with that note, I thank you once again for a patient hearing, and hope this was useful. Thank you very much indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, why don't we all give another round of applause to Mr. Jayantha Fernando, Director, Sri Lanka CERT and General Counsel for ICTA, for that wonderful presentation this morning. And I think from the sound of your clap, I could understand that we could all use a break. So let's break for tea and coffee. It'll be arranged at the foyer area outside the hall, so please do enjoy and be back at the hall by 11:30 for our panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation, it turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking, NDB Bank.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation, it turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it. Somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking. NDB Bank.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation. It turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking, NDB Bank.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation, it turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking, NDB Bank.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation. It turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it. Somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking, NDB Bank.
Innovation is a journey of doubt and uncertainty. A journey that makes life better for all. Whoever we are, wherever we are. A journey that creates new value for all. Innovation, it turns today's technology into value of the future. From 5G deployment and its ecosystem came digital transformation in all industries. From Huawei Cloud came the wonders of widespread remote healthcare. From AI machine learning came better, more intelligent ways to protect the Earth. From AI computing came advanced astronomy research and a deeper understanding of the cosmos. From new ways to live, a greener Earth, and futures beyond our imagination. This journey of open innovation and collaborative value creation has given us inclusive development and new breakthroughs. Together with our partners, we will journey on. Our journey of innovation will never end.
In the old ways, to open a bank account, you panic. There's the ID, the billing proof, feed the dog, the cat, and out the door. How's my hair? Oh, the wrong pair. For goodness sake, don't start now. Move left, move right, move over, move in front. Did I touch? Double mask, triple better. Oh dear, almost there. I should go. Where? Yes, ID. I have it. Somewhere. With Neos, you just smile and open your savings or current accounts online securely from home. It's the new frontier in banking. NDB Bank.